In this video we want to talk about organizational culture, and in particular the development of organizational culture. Now let's start by looking at the determinants of culture. Well, the culture of an organization is dependent to a large extent on its founders. It's their personalities and their values and the way in which they construct the organization that really reflects the culture of the organization. It's the founders who put in place the way the organization is constructed, and it's the founders who say what is important and what is not important, and set out the practices and the ways of working and the ways that the employees should relate to each other and relate to the managers. So to a large extent it's the founders who set out the culture of the organization. And many organizations, hundreds of years after the founders have left and gone, those organizations may still reflect part of that culture. So our first point related to the determinants of culture is the influence of the founders of the business and what they deemed to be important. It's important for employees to understand the culture of an organization so that they can easily settle in. The employees must not be at variance with the culture. If they are, they're going to be in conflict with the culture, and the chances are the employees will not survive in that environment. So for employees to work for different companies, they must try to understand the culture of the company. They must try to understand the way the management see the organization, the way the management see the processes, the way they relate to each other, the way they relate to the employees and to the customer. So how does the organization structure itself, and how does it operate on a day-to-day basis? And it's important for the employees to understand this and, in a sense, to accept it. Otherwise they're going to find working there extremely harsh, extremely stressful, because they're going to be in conflict with the culture of the organization. There are a number of influences that contribute to the culture of an organization. We've just mentioned the founders, but there are others that need to be taken into account. The history and ownership of the organization is important. To a large extent, it's independent from the individuals within the organization. The history of the organization, the principles that were set out at the start, and indeed who owns the organization currently, and the values of the people that own the organization will determine the culture of the organization. So it's important that the employees currently working for the organization understand this. But organizations also have internal cultures, ones which are in a sense more organic, more homegrown. They are developed over a period of time through the interaction of employees one with another, and with the employees interacting with the management and the management interacting with senior management. There is a way of working that has come to be acceptable within the organization, a way of dealing with each other that's acceptable, and that could be almost unique to the organization. It's the culture of the organization. In fact, some companies develop almost their own language. They have particular tools, they have particular processes, and they will have very idiosyncratic or very unique names for these tools and processes. And trades and professions will eventually adopt this language. So it's the case that the way in which the organization operates reflects its culture, and that develops over a period of time. But different ownership styles determines the culture. Some owners may be very keen to grow the business, to make a lot of profit, and to reinvest the profits perhaps in the organization and thereby grow the organization, make it larger and uh, expand into other markets. And that might be the driving force for some owners. In those organizations, there'll be a heavy emphasis on efficiency and discipline and work routine, and it'll be quite an efficient organization, but one perhaps that's quite harsh as well for the workers. But one which is driven by the desire to grow. Other organizations may be more easygoing. The owners may not have the same perspective. The owners want the organization to survive, but they don't necessarily want it to be big and lose control of the organization because it becomes too big. They want to have a smaller organization, one that generates enough to keep the employees, keep them happy, but also make some profit for the owner. A famous economist called John Hicks called this the quiet life. Some owners might want the quiet life. They want to make enough, survive, but not necessarily have high levels of growth. So the employees working for that organization will have an easier life, an easier working life, but they may not get as big rewards. They may not be very well paid, but they'll have a nice working experience. The size of the organization impacts culture as well. Large organizations tend to be more impersonal. They're driven by rules, by regulations, and these rules and regulations have emerged out of necessity because one department needs to link to a different department, but the protocols for linking have to be worked out, have to be agreed, and the chances are they're structured. There's a paper chain between them that links them. One piece of paper follows the previous piece of paper. There's a set of rules, and it must be ticked off. And there are rules about just about everything within the organization because it's a large organization. It needs control. And large organizations tend to be quite inflexible, so that the employees go and work, and they're not in a sense working within a friendly environment. They're working within an environment that enables them to have a decent income, but that's their only point of contact mentally with the organization. They go, complete given tasks and functions, and in return are rewarded. That's because it's a large organization. It's impersonal. They don't ever get to see the owners. They may see their manager, but the manager may not see the top manager for a long period. And the workers themselves may never see the top management. They may never see the chief executive officer or the managing director. They wouldn't recognize this person. So it's a very impersonal culture. It may be the organization is small, in which case everyone within the organization knows the owner. The owner is on the shop floor every day, talking to people and discussing things, and there's more involvement. So there'll be a different culture. In this case, the owner will see the workers, will understand the workers' concerns, their issues, the human side of working, because the owner has contact with him. In large organizations, the chief executive may never see a person working on the shop floor. The organization is too big, and they don't know who's working there. They don't know what their concerns or their issues are. So different cultures. And technologies. The level of technical skills will be an important factor for employees if the culture of an organization specializes in technology. It may be the case in modern working conditions that employees don't even mix amongst their peer groups. They are instead confined to working with technology, working with computers. So they don't have much contact with their peers at the same level. So it's not as if they have contact with the upper echelons of the company. They are instead working with the technology. They're working in a very impersonal environment. So the culture in that case is very different to what would have been experienced, let's say, 100 years ago. Um, so culture is conditional upon those factors. On the other hand, if an organizational culture values customer service capability, this will give rise to other characteristics. So some companies might value contact with customers, in which case the employees will not only link to each other and the management will listen to their opinions about the product or about innovations or about proposed changes. They may also consult more widely, and there may be discussions with customers. So in this case it's more inclusive. It's a more inclusive organization. So we have to contrast the more solitary existence because of the impact of technology on the one hand with a different type of organization, one which is very much human based, looking for involvement, looking for ideas, looking for creativity, looking for motivational factors that will reward effort and engage workers and give them a better quality of working and a better quality of life. Culture is also determined by goals and objectives. What the organisation hopes to achieve will influence the culture. Does the organisation, as I said earlier, does it want to grow? Does it want to have a quiet life? Does it want to remain small and just survive but be happy? Or does it fall in between the two and it wants to grow, but grow within a certain area and perhaps not to expand too much? Certainly it may not have aspirations to engage in international trade, or it might do. So the goals and the objectives of the business will influence the culture. The management style within the business will have to match the goals and objectives. If the goal is to expand and expand considerably, then the management style will have to be much more forceful, much more almost aggressive to try and get the changes implemented and to work hard, dedicate themselves to the objectives of the business to try and get them implemented, get the changes worked out, and grow the business. On the other hand, if the business is quite small and the management, the owners I should say, are quite happy with that, then the management style may be quite relaxed, not very forceful. Organizations will inherit ideas, they will inherit skills and resources to accommodate their values. Organizations change over time, but they may not change significantly from one generation to the next. They may still carry ideas and skills that were passed on. And in a sense that's understandable because managers may have learnt from previous managers. They may have been trained by the previous managers, and therefore they will have the same values. On the other hand, the management may be new, they may be brought in from the outside, recruited externally, and may have radically different views and different cultures. And therefore, the organisation may mutate according to that. The environment is also important, and this consists of several levels. Customer markets, the suppliers market, the financial market, government influences and competition. And all of these will have an impact on the environment. All of these will impact on the way the business operates. So the environment is also important. People, well, management styles develop the organization culture. Management is made up from people, so are the workers. And people are complex. They have got their own agendas. They want to fulfill certain things. It may be they just simply want to feed their families and pay their bills. Others may want promotion because they want to have cars and expensive holidays and so on. So there will be a complex within the organization, and that complex may be it may be rewarding initiative, trying to get workers to apply themselves more diligently. It may be one which is trying to develop the organization to grow, as I said earlier, but it may mean that the culture of the people have to change. The culture may be quite relaxed. The environment within which the organization is placed may see the world in a very relaxed, very humanistic way. But then the organization arrives and it wants efficiency. It wants a technocratic structure, one which is orientated towards growth. And there will be a clash of cultures as a consequence. So people are important within this determinant of culture. And the people will not just have culture from the outside, they'll have all sorts of influences that determine their culture, their education system, perhaps the impact of religion, the impact of their history, the local community, family structures. And all of these issues must be recognized within the organization. Employees' preference of how they wish to be managed is an important factor in shaping culture. Some employees don't want to be controlled. It's not a part of their culture. They don't want to be controlled to a large extent. They will accept that they need to complete certain tasks, but perhaps they don't want to be watched or spoken to harshly because it violates the norms of their culture. They don't want to be humiliated. They don't want to be punished. They want to go to work and have dignity at work. So the preferences of the employees must be factored in as well as a determinant of the culture of the organization. If employees are bound to a culture which they do not support, this will cause a reaction. It's important that the employees understand the culture of the organization, what the organization is attempting to do, but the organization should try and take the employees along with it. It should encourage them, not force them. Certainly not bully them into agreeing. So perhaps it's better to have a policy of education and training and explanation and rewards and praise for work well done in accordance to the guidelines that the company wish to see happen. So employees, if they don't agree with the culture, there will be inevitably major issues for the organization. These could include industrial action, various demands from the employees. It could mean low productivity because the employees don't engage with the work properly. They don't try that hard. The quality of the work may be bad because the employees are not engaged with the activities. And It may mean that the organization has to have a more rigorous form of supervision and control. So it's important that the people within the organization understand the culture of the organization, and that there should not be a variance between the culture of the organization and the wider culture from which the people come. There should not be conflict between the two cultures, the culture of the organization and the wider culture. If both coincide, the organization will be more efficient. There will be more engagement on the part of the employees. They will want to work. They will want to make an effort, and they will relate to the objectives that are set out by the management. So, in this video, we've seen that culture is quite complex. It depends on many factors. It's vague, so we're not able to precisely pin it down. But we do know that it's important, because ultimately this will lead to the survival of the organization, but it'll also determine the efficiency of the organization and the structure of the organization. But that's all we're going to deal with in this session. It's important that you do some additional reading in this area and fill out your notes, because culture and organizations, both the influence of the external culture of the society on the company and the internal culture of the company itself, as determined by its founder members and the processes and the technologies it uses and so on, all the things we've discussed here. These are important issues in understanding organizations. But let's leave it at that for the moment and say thank you for watching.